Alrighty, check everyone. Doing a little bit of a different episode tonight, so let me know in the comments how everything's sounding, everything like that. Let's drop a couple things in here. Let us know where you're tuning in from and drop in your questions and comments in below. I'm going to make sure that we're good on all the platforms. Should be streaming on my personal Facebook page, the 100 Proof Whitetails podcast Facebook page, and the Old Tin Cup YouTube channel, which is where we put the 100 Proof Whitetails content up. I'm just making sure that we are all good on this, making sure all the privacies are good, marked to public. That way, anybody can check these out, share them, etc. Got a lot to talk about tonight. I know we're getting a late start with it, and we'll kind of explain why. And I'm running a solo show tonight. Talk about the why for that too. So yeah, just double check the privacy on the 100 Proof. We're perfect. We're public over there. So anyway, we should be all live across all the platforms. If you guys could let me know how the audio is here in the office, that would be great. Like I said, first time trying it down here tonight. So we'll see how it goes here in the office. Did a little bit of reorganizing and revamping here. So we'll see how it turns out long term. I wanted to set this up for being able to do virtual Zoom conversations and calls with clients and stuff like that. A little bit more professional. Set up a dual monitor system, which is over here off to my left, for helping me lay out and design parcels. I can see the parcel over on the big screen, have different stuff open on another screen, etc. Just helping me bring a better product to the table for my consulting clients, and make me more efficient through the work that I'm doing with everything. So a couple comments rolling in. Paula saying, hey Paula, how you doing? Was planning on trying the syrup tonight, just a little taste to see how that's going. And we'll see how that's going. But I'm just getting back home, literally. I know, like I said, we usually try to shoot for about a 7 o'clock start, and I'm about 45 minutes late. That's why we say 7-ish for our start for our shows. So thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it. My mom says sounds good. Thank you for the feedback on that. Like I said, that's the only thing going forward, because I don't run a mixed board or anything like that with my podcast audio or anything like that. So all these are going to be, recorded up live, and that's what you get, single takes. So Nick Scott tuning in says, hey Ben, what's up, buddy? A lot of stuff, man. A lot of topics to talk about tonight. Some things that a lot of folks maybe aren't thinking about with a piece of property that we can dive into with that, and kind of where I've been all day, and all the above with it. So I need one of these Old Forester 1920 tonight. This is obviously I enjoy this bottle. This is where I'm going to tonight. I want something with a little bit of oomph. It's Valentine's Day. My wife is teaching her class at Hobart College, so she'll be home late, and that means I can have the show tonight and be a little late for that. Got some other stuff done today in the interim, so that's what we're doing. Russ says, hey Ben, what's up? What's the best whiskey for Valentine's Day? Tonight I'm drinking Old Forester 1920, Prohibition style, 115 proof. This is my favorite from the Whiskey Row series that I've had so far. The only one I haven't had is the new 1924 from Old Forester. The price tag on that one is the reason why I haven't had it, and it just hasn't been getting that good of reviews. And I don't need to buy any more whiskey right off. I'm pretty set for right now. So yeah. But anyway, back to what I've been doing today. Worked half day at work, and then I went out. Worked a half day at work. Well, I guess my light just died. Worked a half day at work today, and then went down and did a property visit on a new client. Consulted on a family piece of theirs before historically, and then got a call from a brother of that client to consult on their piece. Laid it out, brand new type of setup for me. Couple client consultants that they had reached out to. I wasn't the first on their list. And they reached out to me because a couple consultants didn't even get back to them. And then a couple other ones said that there was nothing they could do for that parcel and everything like that. And the parcel is going to have some challenges and everything like that. And I will kind of briefly touch on it. It's over 75 acres of straight tillable and pasture ground. There's hardly a single tree on it. I think we touched maybe 3 trees that were over 6 foot tall today. And that's it. There's not a single tree on the parcel. So we're going to be looking at some different ideas on how to convert that and still balance the cattle aspect of grazing some pasture lot, as well as keeping some tillable for income for that parcel, and then balancing in hunting, being a fairly new hunter or um, a re-returning hunter. Let's say they hunted when they were younger but then kind of got out of it for a while, but now the kids are getting into hunting, so now that they're wanting to develop that piece for hunting, whereas a few years ago they bulldozed the whole thing off for the tillable and pasture, and what they did until was kind of set back all that clock. So now we have to jumpstart that and look at different ways to balance that setup. So I look forward to drawing up that map. I wanted to get it on a screen. I have certain guidelines I'm working with areas that are going to turn into pasture in the next 3 to 5 years, areas where the fields aren't yielding, which is how we're going to have to blend some of that into the plan, and being totally upfront and honest with that person throughout the whole process of today, and just talking to them about how to what to expect from this, and this isn't going to be taking everything, going full on. You have to still balance the uses of that property with the hunting, and then keep your goals and everything realistic with the outcome on how that turns out too. I think it does have some great potential because of some of the other habitat loss in the area. I don't think we'll be able to fully offset the amount of other loss of habitat that's happened in the last 12 to 14 months, let's say, in the neighborhood. But we're going to do our best to combat it and try to provide more hunting opportunity on that parcel, and therefore better deer and better hunting strategy relating to that, balancing the farming aspect with the hunting aspect to try to find the best balance between those two things. And I think that's going to be huge and key for that parcel. So I'm really looking forward to that challenge, and I'm glad that I was able to undertake that, and look forward to drawing that up here tomorrow down in the office. So got a rough draw up on my phone and the rough paper map I have, but I want to get a nice digital copy and be able to send those exact waypoints out the way we lay that out to that client, to help them get that laid out. So Mark Rasmussen, I'm sorry, Mark, if I ever mispronounce your name. I get my own name wrong from time to time. Is it too early to frost seed? It's a good topic because co-host Nate, who had some other stuff going on today and tonight, and I didn't know when I was going to be back around today because of everything I tried to fit into this day, burning the daylight out. He was actually out seeding in one of his food plots this year. He was doing a little bit of dragging for a little bit of soil manipulation on it, and then frost seeded or kind of reseeded some clover into that stand of that field. So that's what he was out there doing today. I think this is a good time of the year. We might be a touch early, but with the way this seasonably, I guess, warm spring has been, I wouldn't be afraid to frost seed right now. Typically, I'm shooting for March, but because we don't have snowpack where we are specifically in my area, where we have to deal with like runoff issues or something like that, not a lot of rain in the forecast coming up. I think it's a good time to be able to get out there and frost seed some of your fields and stuff, especially if you're in a little bit warmer of an area or an area that hasn't had snowfall. I know some areas downstate, Binghamton, and kind of going down toward New York City, some of the eastern seaboard and stuff like that, Massachusetts, Connecticut, some of those areas are getting some pretty good snows right now. So that might not be a good option if you're tuning in from out in that area. But I think right now, mid-February to late February, going into March, if you have the right conditions of that nice freeze thaw, like today when it got really cold this morning. I mean, I could feel it when I was walking around today, other than a couple of the wet seeps on that property that we walked in the fields that we're going to transition into some different habitat types for that client. I think that it was pretty hard and firm today from the freeze. And then during the thaw throughout the day, the ground was getting softer as we walked, and the snow burnt off with the sun coming out. That's going to let that ground, suck right back in. And then when it freezes, it'll expand up. And like we talked about in the last episode with Nate, and talking about that article with him reading that into the in the New York Outdoor News, talking about how that process works, where the ground heaves with the freeze because of the space, just like a water bottle freezes and fills up and expands and pops the top. You can get that with the soil where it freezes, expands because it takes up more space. And then once it thaws, it sucks it back in. So it opens up those areas in the soil and then lets them back in because stuff expands and then contracts. So I think now is a good time to frost seed. But like we said, frost seeding your species like your clovers is going to be way more successful than trying to frost seed something like corn or soybeans or something like that. That's more apt to rot for a seed. So typically a seed like a clover is much more applicable to frost seed. Chicory works fairly well frost seeded in the blend as well. So that was the only thing that Nate's mix didn't have, where the 100 proof spring mix does have, just because I had a bad mice problem in my garage and my chicory seed. Apparently, mice love chicory seed and don't really touch clover seed. Anything that was touched by mice got thrown out, counted as a loss or whatnot. But all my chicory I had just got completely ransacked by mice. Area of my garage I hadn't been in for a couple weeks, and it didn't take them very long to defeather the entire bag, literally, and just made a huge mess. And unfortunately, we threw all the chicory out. So I got to get a little bit more to reblend up for the rest of my frost seeding I was going to do for the experimental plots, but tweak the blend a little bit for Nate for his mix today. So that's what Nate was out doing today while I was out consulting, running around, meeting farmers, all sorts of different stuff. So a couple comments rolling in. Nick Scott comments in, says, took your advice on hinge cut and the red pine and created a screening and bedding cut. Deer are loving it. Yeah, that's one of the really nice things right now this time of the year. And I'm glad to hear it, Nick, that you can really see that real time deer usage in some of these locations that you're doing this habitat manipulation to, whether it's thinning out around apple trees, dropping some limbs if you're pruning them, or if you're dropping some of your cuttings from your habitat work that you're doing, whether it's a hinge cut or it's like a mix of traditional felling cuts mixed in with that hinge cutting. They're definitely going to utilize those tops in that cover and structure. The one thing I would do is go back into these areas, and this is something I don't think is talked about enough, and really making sure that you're not boxing them in. If there's an area in your cutting that you would like them to use, and for whatever reason they're using, let's just say, this half of your cutting and not this half of your cutting, try to figure out why they're not using that, whether they're not bedding in it. That could just be wind direction, could be sunlight, different exposure rates, different cover and structure that the hill and topography provide, could be a bunch of different things. But if they're not even getting in there and browsing in one area of it or not, it might be that they feel too confined or boxed into that area. So don't be afraid to go back through. And I do it a lot, is you get perfect textbook hinge cuts, but it just ends up being a little bit too thick for what deer like. And you have to go back through and open those trails back up and give them multiple entry and exits out of that to make them feel safe in that location. Nick said, should be able to get a lot of hardwood regeneration growth in there. The red pine are very thin. I mainly took out cherry, ash, and maple with some hickory and beech. Sounds like he had a nice little mix of a diverse pocket in there of timber species. So with putting those tops on the ground through your traditional felling or hinge cutting or whatever you were doing in that location, making sure you got enough sunlight. If you're looking to keep those hinges alive, that's kind of a main takeaway with it. You will definitely get some regeneration in those areas where the tops are protecting those young tree species. And that was one of the cool things that I got to see and really show that client on a real-time basis today, was some of the areas where he had pushed up some brush in the ditch bed, where we were looking at it and saying, man, there's, he's like, there's not just a lot of growing in here. I said, well, it is. It's just the deer have ate what good little stuff is here. And he's like, well, what do you mean? So we looked in some of the brush piles, and there's raspberries 6-7 feet tall. And there's, tree saplings coming up, ash and dogwood predominantly. There's a little bit of a wetter spot where we kind of push the tops up into. And we really got to see that real life seclusion cage of that brush pile. And I said, this whole ditch would be full of this right now, pretty much. But because of the deer density and stuff like that, it's just kind of overwhelming some of this area, and letting these areas go a few years, trying to keep them thick if we want to keep them thick for habitat and cover and food value, or if we wanted to kind of turn that access ditch that ditch into an access going up through there, because it's a fairly dry ditch, and with rubber knee boots, you should have no problem navigating it. You're down below topography grade, you can get in through that defilé. And that's going to give a good access point going up through kind of the cut of that property as we kind of lay out these different pockets and kind of divide up the property again, versus what it was when it was more little hedgerows and stuff, a handful of years ago. Now we're going to try to speed up the clock and go forward through different applications in that. So, yeah, Nick, I'm really, really, really cool on that. Want to touch on Nick's other comment here. Left multiple open areas in the cut and multiple escape routes. Sounds like you did a good job layering that in to that thing and having a good plan of that design going into it, man. So I love to hear that. Love to hear that, these spots were things that, you talked about, we talked about on the show, and kind of took some of the bits and pieces of what we're saying, and that helped you. We love hearing that. On any side of the perspective, whether it's me, Nate, one of the guests we have on the show. If we're helping you guys out, we love hearing about it in the comments. So thank you, Nick, and thank you everybody else that's always fed in with the comments and topics. We love hearing about the successes. Nate said he was hoping to find a shed or two today while he was out there, but no such luck. LOL. Yeah, it's we didn't find a single shed out there today either. There's not a whole lot of food available because of the row crop coming off and not having a seeded in cover crop or whatever behind that. But yeah, I mean, you could still find a spare one, but if you have a fairly light winter like we've had, I haven't went out and pulled cards. I'm hoping to maybe this week or this weekend, depending on how the timelines flow with everything, to see what we still got holding. But I got a picture from a neighbor the other day, or a short video is actually what it was. And I think he flushed like 5 or 6 bucks out that were bedded up on this little knoll. And it looked like, 5 of those 6 bumped, I believe 6 deer out, and 5 of the 6 at least had antlers or were still holding, which was really cool to see. And that was, I think that was a week and a half ago. But it can happen like that, and especially when they're grouped up like that. And you do have a fairly tight age structure. You do get some bumped off with this late season sparring and stuff like that, especially if you got bucks that aren't really common, neighbors with each other, or whatever you want to call it, new deer coming into an area, because there's areas in that hierarchy or whatnot that have opened up on a property because deer have been taken, killed, hit by cars, whatever it might be. You start seeing an influx of new deer into areas a lot of times this time of the year. So, and then you get a little bit of that headbutting because you don't know the new guy on the block, and you got to push him around a little bit and see where you stand with him. So this is a good time where you can find, and I found side-by-side antlers off of different deer. 2 left sides sitting within 5-10 feet of each other, for an example. And I would probably attribute that to a sparring session or something between 2 bucks, knocking them off of each other as they were going with it. So yeah, it depends. And I mean, we've had some where I've literally been out pulling cameras as we're doing maybe a March shed hunt, something like that. And then we pull the cameras in April if they're still kicking. And we got a buck like a day or 2 after we walked out of that camera location, and boom, there's a buck with both sides or one side or whatever. Had them fresh enough where they've been, walking, a couple days behind us, and they got blood on their head, and we go, oh shoot, now we got to walk that block again or whatever. So, and it's completely, I say it's fairly random depending on the time of the year. I talked about this with a good friend of mine the other day, talking about the locale of sheds and when they shed. You could have bucks on your property throughout 90% of the winter and still find 0% of the sheds, just because of hitting that magical second when that antler drops. And that could be right over your property line. It could be that they're bedding on yours and then feeding on the neighbors, and the neighbor finds them all in the field. Or they could be feeding on yours and bedding on the neighbors, and you find them all in the bedding. I mean, it's completely somewhat random when they do drop off. Obviously, testosterone levels and body conditions are going to, influence a lot of that. But I still think some deer do drop earlier than others as a whole. So, yeah, luckily this time of the year, you might find a lucky shed or 2 out there. And I know a couple folks have been finding them, but I just haven't been out looking yet, mostly because I think it's a little too early. Historically, even with, I would say, a normal to moderate, we'd be on a super light, I think, on this scale, but a moderate to a normal winter, we are pretty much still ahead of schedule for most of the deer shedding out. And I like to be out there when probably about 75% or so is shed out. and we still find old ones every year too. So there's ones we walk past, there's ones we walk over, there's ones we walk the ground before they even drop them on the ground there. There's ones that we've found that have been toted into spots by coyotes and chewed on. So I guess you never know. And that's kind of the adult Easter egg hunt side of it that I really enjoy. That you don't know where the shed's going to be. We found them in people's yards before. We found them hanging in trees before. I've actually found one in a mud puddle before, frozen with a couple tines sticking up out of it in an old tractor rut, which was pretty cool once upon a time. Yeah, hanging in bushes, found hangers, side by side sets, single sides, little itty bitty spikers. And then yeah, the only thing I found this year so far is that one big deadhead. That one, I say big, but that one really nice deadhead's probably 130 class or so, say 8-pointer, which is a really, really solid buck in any place in New York, let alone, in the country. So there's Nick's comment. Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you, man. Definitely appreciate all the support everybody gives us. Means the world to us. That's why we do this, guys, is to help folks out. Tom comments in, said, I just saw a buck on Monday morning that still had his running across the field. Yeah, it's very common. I'm hoping to maybe be able to get out, and we've been doing some more ash tree hazard removal, some of the smaller trees that haven't really been bore hammered yet too hard, cleaning up some invasives right now because we've had such a light winter with snow removal side of it. So we've been getting out and doing some woodlot work at the college, and I'm wondering maybe we might stumble on a shed or two. I know there was a freak giant that I saw when I was running the mower this year. Chased a doe almost right into the side of the tractor when I was mowing. And supposedly they saw him late December. One of the campus safety guys saw him even up into December. So it might be banging around there. It might, who knows? It might be over in Canandaigua Lake. He might have swam across the lake. He might be down in Naples by now, or who knows where. Or he might be, got hit by a car. It's tough to say, but there was a really big one running around the college this year. So, and we did find a few when I was in college there, walking the woodlots and stuff like that. But with this seasonably warm winter, I would definitely be cautious out there for ticks. I didn't pick up any on me today, in the initial tick check before I got in the truck. But definitely I've picked a couple off me this year. My wife had one on her in the brief one walk we did have this year together, pulling cards, and that early card pull we did in February on the one property. She ended up with one on her hand, but that was the only one we found that day. And that could have just been brush on the right, one piece of brush going into a woodlot. It's tough to say right now, but the ticks have definitely been something that's been more something to contend with the last couple of years, which kind of brings me to another good point for shed season coming up. Permethrin, treating your my brush clothes, I call them. I have a heavy duty set of brush pants that I run for shed hunting. So when I'm walking through briars and stuff like that, they're not poking down through to my legs or poking down through my legs as bad when I'm out there walking around with it. So I treat those with permethrin. My boots get sprayed down with permethrin. That way I'm trying to limit the amount of ticks I might be picking up when I'm out there in the woodlot. So, oh, Nate, good comment. I'll pop this up. So teaser alert, not talking about the hat or nothing, that's on my head, but we have our proof that came in for the 100 proof knit hats, which are available just in time for this, just in time for the last bit of winter here. As I'm trying to pull this picture up, I'll give you the little logo teaser. I wish I would have been able to pull this up on the screen. Had enough time today with everything I had going on, but I'll try to get it on the screen. So there we go, guys. This is going to be the nice patch going on the knit hats, and maybe we'll put it on the well, it's not a patch, it's a stitched in logo, but that'll be on our knit hats. So we're looking for interest. We're going to put a post up on the page here in the next couple days, trying to generate interest to try to see how many we got to put together for an order, trying to make a a bulk run to make it the most economical for folks. And when we get the final pricing back, we will definitely let you guys know about that. So yes, sorry, Nate, they're embroidered, not patches. Good catch. Kind of caught me mid thing, which brings me to step number 2 of this. Had to because of the Valentine's Sip and Stroll coming up in Phelps, New York, which we will be pouring at 4 till 7 or 7:30, I think. Had to get a refill on all of our stickers, so had to put in a big order for these nice. I went with the 3-inch matte finish 100 proof logo stickers to have at the event. I think we were doing like $2 a sticker or 3 for $5 or something like that for the heavy duty vinyl stickers. So yeah, and let us know. Swing by the tasting. I think we're going to be there, a little bit early to set up and everything like that. I'm sure I'll be helping my wife and Amanda and all of them do a little bit of last minute setups for stuff. So yeah, come by, say hi. We'll be at the Country Lawyers, or it's the Old Country Lawyers, which is right between Smoking Tails and the Phelps Art Center, which is the church there on Church Street there in Phelps. Be right out behind, and then right across from another church too, which is just a regular church. But we'll be right there. It's a little red building. We'll have a little placard out front, tasting inside. 100 proof whitetails. We'll be there Saturday. Like I said, 4 till 7, I believe, is the times for that. So we got to be there a little early to set up, but we'll be there. And I think they're going to have maybe a little bit of snack stuff to have a food tasting station in that location as well. We will be tasting 3 different. Well, I guess yesterday, I think they are all bourbons. We have 3 different bourbons we're going to be tasting. We're going to be tasting going up in proof. We're going to be tasting Benchmark Old Number 8, which was a favorite last year of a lot of folks. Pretty easy going 80 proofer, bottom shelfer, available every day. That's a good one. Buffalo Trace distillate. So if you can't get your hands on regular Buffalo Trace, there is Old Number 8. And then we have going up in proof, we have Maker's Mark, just the traditional Maker's Mark. Like I said, just a little bit of step up of proof from that 80 proofer. And then for our high proof offering, we have Wild Turkey 101. So yeah, Buffalo Trace represented, Wild Turkey, and then Maker's Mark represented. So 3 good ones, I think, and 3 good staples, and all those were purchased from K&M. Thanks to those folks over there for always helping us out. And yeah, good old New York. That's where this been talking here, because you guys have been putting in so many comments, and I appreciate it. But I just wanted to have a little taste of the Old Forester. It's been sitting here for about 20 minutes now. Man, that's good after a long day. That is good after a long day. So, also wanted to shout out Nate while I'm thinking about it. Where is it? Oh, it's right here. So Nate, the other day, I had this idea that I saw for an SD card holder. And Nate whipped me up one of these bad boys, and we'll put a better picture up on the podcast page, but you guys won't be able to see it. But 100 proof podcast, 100 proof whitetails podcast. It reminds me of that Guess Who game from when you were a kid, because the way the cards kind of rock back and forth when it's not on the little backer drop that I made for it, so it sits at an angle, and not too much of an angle where the cards fall forward. But for the off season, cool thing to sit on the desk when I'm out here checking on my cameras and getting them all ready for season, or breaking them down at the end of season. I have a nice location I can stash my cards. They're all organized, different gigabyte sizes, everything like that. So I thought 40 slots was going to be enough, but then I forgot that I went out and bought some cameras for some folks and stuff like that for different projects I got coming up, and for maybe real estate listings, stuff like that, where I can throw a couple cameras on it, get some trail cam pictures on it, because that's one of the things that I'm noticing, that a lot of parcels listed right now aren't utilizing trail cam photos, whether they're historical photos or real time photos, especially real time photos. Everybody's got that picture from 2015 or 2016, it seems like, on a property. But a lot of people don't maybe have what's on that property currently. And that's where I think throwing a couple cameras up when you're creating your listing could be very advantageous to helping market and sell that piece of property for sure. So, what else have I been doing today? Been running all over. Like I said, college, then consulting client. Pretty easy going. We sat down, mapped it out, talked about specific locations that we could modify into habitat of lower field yields, wet areas that they were thinking about tiling, and we can now abandon the tiling idea because we're going to transition that into habitat. I have a fair size allotment of land that I'm allowed to tweak a little bit and take out of the tillable program, as long as it fits for different acreage requirements for changing some of the fields, different row requirements for the spacing of the head of the equipment and the size of the equipment that they're using on the parcel. All that got discussed and taken into account with the different year rotations and stuff like that. So again, really cool property. I've never had one that's been 100%, and I say 100 with a little asterisk. It's probably like 99, I guess, total for the acreage, but 100% basically open ground. So it's a legit blank canvas that we are starting from scratch on in a lot of cases. I'm starting to let stuff go fallow. We talked about doing some cutting plantings or plug type plantings with different tree species, especially in some of these wetter areas. There's a lot of nice red osier dogwood native in that seed bank. Not a ton of invasives like honeysuckle and buckthorn that were obvious on that parcel. So that's something that has a little bit of encouragement for me. I did see some of it, obviously, in just about every woodlot you will, but it's one of those things where it's not that big of a concern to me because I'm not walking into a straight field of buckthorn or a straight field of honeysuckle or something like that. So, um, looking at some of the species coming up, and then talking to the landowner about getting familiar with some of these species, because this is stuff you're going to be dealing with, for the years of the rest of your time owning this property. Is these are the species that are going to be here, the ones that are coming up out of the seed bank, and the dogwoods are coming up. They're getting fairly established, and the deer are browsing them once they get to about 3 foot tall. Nice chopping height for them, and they kind of trim them into bonsai trees. But if we're flooding the habitat with good cover, and some of these areas maybe make an area where they could bed in it, for the day or something like that, and try to transition into developing this over time. And that's what I kind of came back to again and again, is this is something that we're going to make benefits that first year, but this is going to need to develop and progress, and Mother Nature is going to have to help us out here with some timing and helping this stuff get along. And that's some of the stuff that you just can't snap your fingers overnight and it makes. But different applications, like we talked about, utilizing, one of the things that I love is utilizing treetops or brush and pulling them out into fields and letting that keep structure immediately in that field, and then allowing nice structure to come in behind that where the deer can't reach in and browse that. That's a huge key for transitioning some of these old field type habitats or fallow ground field habitats, transitioning them over into more productive forb type ground. We looked at some areas that hadn't been touched in just a back corner of a field, or a front corner of a field, I guess it was in this particular example. Hadn't been touched in about 6-7 years. You had nice dogwood growing in there. You had goldenrod in there. It might not look the prettiest, but it was good quality habitat. And had that been deeper in the property, or a section of the property where it made more sense for a layout kind of side of things with the design of it, that's what I kept telling him. I said, this is what we want to see in a few years. This is the type of structure mixed in with a couple pulled in tops or brush piles, not brush piles necessarily, but some brush in there to keep some structure out in that. You're going to have deer being able to bed out in that comfortably, and fit deer on the property, whereas before it was just food. So you're literally trying to hunt them on the last hour of the day, because the first hour of the day, you're probably not going to be able to get out there without bumping them. So that's where we're trying to make this property develop, but develop from basically, I guess, year one, which I'm really looking forward to how this property progresses going forward. And man, I'm excited. I'm excited because I've never had a scale size of this 80 acres or 75 plus acres, to be able to play with from basically ground zero, and then also have to mash the pasture and tillable side of it into that, and being able to blend that together. And that's what you have to do. Is it's not just one cut and dry type thing for different people and different properties. Every situation is different. Every property is different. Every condition is different. So what works, and I'm suggesting for one person, yes, there's a lot of similarities and some overlap with a lot of it, because a lot of it just boils back to good hunting strategy. But some of the management side of things are going to change drastically from property to property, especially for priority levels. It's going to change property to property. That makes a huge difference, is where the priorities need to be. And that's one of my things in my pre-visit questionnaires that I really touch on, where I was talking to this gentleman today, and he was saying, he's like, man, I didn't know how to answer that, or I didn't know how to answer this. And I said, well, one of the big ones that I put on there is budget. And a lot of people might be a little, sheepish to say that, I don't have a lot to spend on it, or, oh, don't worry about the money. That's not the issue. You got different ends of the spectrum with it. But the biggest thing that I put in parentheses and started doing that when everybody said a dollar value is, I added in, I think last year or 2 years ago, into that pre-visit questionnaire, is time in the budget, because that's the most valuable resource. And that's where I find most people had the challenge with, is the time side of it to doing these things. So that's why getting not only a good plan in place, but being able to prioritize the types of tasks that you got to do in that first year or first couple years to get the most bang for your buck is absolutely critical. Because you could write up a huge elaborate plan, and I fell victim to this myself on my piece of property, about trying to bite off more than I can chew with different projects and tweaks and different stuff I can add and subtract. Whereas now I kind of stepped back into saying, okay, what's my highest priority? Got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of irons in the fire, different things I do with real estate consulting, the 9 to 5 job, gonna have a kid here soon, all this stuff, and being able to balance it. Definitely got to prioritize what I put my time into on my personal property, is more important now than it probably ever has been, because now my time is getting less and less available for me and my stuff. Um, and rightfully so. I think it's a great thing going forward. I'm blessed to be able to, work with folks, consulting wise, and do the real estate things and help people find pieces of land, and help people, sell their property and get the most value for their parcel and stuff like that. I think it's a wonderful thing, and I'm blessed to be able to do it and have the support and love of my wife to do it. And now to be able to share that and have a little one, I'm through the roof, blessed and just thankful for that, 100%. So yeah, getting a little emotional tonight with it. But anyway, other than that, with the other tasks of the day, met with a local farmer who leases my grandmother's ground. Just tidying up a couple things with the lease agreement for the tillable going forward on that. Finalizing a couple details, stuff like that. Got everything straightened out. A couple of the issues we had in the past addressed, fixed, all of the above. Got it going forward with it in the right direction. And now I got to do more work for that farmer because of that. Unrelated, but just was asked because we started talking about all the stuff I can do, all the other stuff that's been brought up in the conversations we were having today with him about, the maps and the different things that I can do, and, helping them balance and, basically kind of consult on the mapping, the organizational, kind of the management side of things, talking about all the different things that I could potentially help them with. So I got another meeting with that farm, I guess we'll call it. I would say individual, but it's a farm now. It's a whole family ordeal. So I got a whole meeting with them next week, and we'll flesh out the rest of the goals and objectives. But being able to put it out there and get the right crop going into the ground for what folks want, what my grandmother wants, and everything like that for the use of the land and taking care of the land in the right way. Moving forward, I think is a huge piece of that, and they've been very accommodating with that. There's been some humps and some struggles with that. I'm not going to say there hasn't been, but I think moving forward now, they're a great fit and a great tenant going forward with it. So, a couple comments rolled in. Aunt Lynn tuning in. Thank you, Aunt Lynn. Right in the fields. Yeah, just everything's kind of coming to a head here really quick. Middle end of March is a little over a month away now. So yeah, definitely right in the fields tonight on everything, and just had a lot of drive time today. And when you have a lot of drive time in a day, you have a lot of time to think about stuff, and it kind of all hits you for sure. Jerry says, "What's your feeling as to why there seems to be such a rift between bow hunters and crossbow hunters? I don't see that in other states." That's a good comment, Jerry, and I did have that on my phone, and I was going to dip into that, but we can dip into it right now. I think it's a good segue comment. Yeah, so I think it's definitely in other states. I think we see it more here in New York because we live in New York, but I think it's huge in a lot of other states. Where a lot of these areas where it's increased the archery harvest as a whole. Um, I know if Bo Hunt's tuning in tonight, he must not be because I'm assuming he would probably jumped right on this comment right here. He's a very vocal opposition of the crossbow versus vertical bow debate, I guess. My feelings on it are, I think um, if it makes you more ethical in your harvestability, I think it is something that, and this is something that I think me and Nate have both agreed on numerous times, and a lot of other folks that have been on, with us and everything. If it makes you more effective and more um, lethal and more able to get the job done in a more ethical and responsible way, I think it's a good fit. I don't necessarily see where um, it's a cop out for being lazy, or some people say they don't have enough time to do it. I say no matter what weapon you're shooting, you should shoot it, um, numerous times, shoot it throughout the season. It shouldn't just be a go check it at the range, boom, I'm done. Pull your weapon out, even if it's not necessarily just the weapon you're using. I know, Jerry, we talked about a couple things um, about kind of staying sharp or different topics that you do a little blog that you do as well. We talked about different things like having some trigger time, whether it's at the range, backyard with pop cans, doing a little small game hunting this time of the year, especially with the mild winter we've had, putting some trigger time out there and just being proficient with a weapon. A long gun probably type weapon in the small game instance, but you could definitely throw on a few judo points. And my buddy Derek out in Idaho, that was something that he carries in his quiver every time he goes to the woods because they have a fair to high grouse population on a lot of these hillsides. And while you're, hunting along looking for, deer, elk, or whatever you might be hunting up in the hills that day, it's very common to come on to some grouse and being able to get in range and judo point one or two of them. So having those skill sets, shooting your bow throughout the season. I try to shoot it. I shoot my bow, and people will laugh at me for this. I shoot my bow before I go sit every sit. Evening sit. Mornings I don't because I can't see my pins, obviously, when I'm walking into, before I walk into my stand. But evening sits, I carry a block target in the back of my truck and a practice broadhead. And every time before I go to the stand or make my walk in for the day where I park my truck, I put the target up 25, 30 yards, whatever it might be that day. I put the pin on it. I go through my whole setup. I squeeze it off. And that just keeps me sharp with it. So I think that dials back to everything, whether that's bow, crossbow, gun, muzzle loader, handgun, all that stuff. You should you should be able to shoot that weapon proficiently enough and have enough confidence in that weapon that it's going to perform. Um, I think the riff is a lot of folks might see like the crossbow bow debate being a shortcut or cheating, whatever. If you treat it like a bow, like it should be, I have no doubt that they are deadly. They are definitely just as deadly. I think they can be used and abused, as can every weapon, in certain situations. And I'm not saying that it can't do it. I'm just saying that maybe ethically shooting 40, 50, 60 yards with a crossbow, can the weapon do it? Absolutely. Can a vertical bow do it? It can do it. And just like a crossbow can, but the ethics sides of it, I think, start getting a little blurred because they don't treat it as a archery piece of equipment. In some cases, I'm saying some, I'm not trying to throw everybody into a pigeonhole here with it, but I'm just kind of speaking in a very general term. I think it can be used and abused. And again, same thing, just because your rifle can shoot 200-300 yards, if you're not shooting 200-300 yards or further at a range, you have no business shooting your weapon that far at an animal. Like we were talking at leagues this past yesterday, I was talking to a kid who is fairly new into hunting. He shoots leagues with us, and he was saying he's got no problem shooting 50 yards with his bow, 40 yards with his bow. And I asked him, I said, "Well, how many deer have you shot with your bow?" He's like, "Well, just like I forget what he said, one or two, or maybe he said none. I can't even remember what he said, um, in the conversations or whatnot. But he's like, "Oh, I shoot 40, 50 yards all the time with my bow." And I'm like, "But when you're talking living, breathing animals, the ethics side and the the uh, I'm on a loss for word for the other side of the conversation. I wanted to go that the ethics side and um the logistics side of it is it's a living breathing target. You're not shooting paper, you're not shooting foam. And do I shoot 40, 50 yards during season? Yes, I'd like to shoot that far when I'm practicing. um but case in point, I've missed them right dead close. I've had them right in what I like to be my wheelhouse at 20, 30 yards, and they just don't take the right trail or the right situation. And they drop on the shot, whatever it might be. All that stuff can kind of come into play when you're dealing with a living, breathing target, that you just don't get with paper and foam, let alone the adrenaline kick that 99% of us get when we're in the situation. Um, all that comes into play and should be factored into your decision making when you decide to make a shot or when to shoot, when to draw, all that stuff, when to raise your weapon, and then your backstop beyond all that. It's all a big process, and that stuff needs to be rehearsed and practiced to be proficient with it and ethical with it. uh, Jerry says, "I know I don't have the shoulders I had when I was your age. Your mom and aunt know why. I just can't draw any compound anymore." And that's an entirely fair argument. I'm like I said, I'm not anti crossbow by any means, whatsoever. um I just think that they need to be treated like archery equipment, like they are. And some of these companies that, again, I get it. It's marketing. It's trying to sell a product. You shoot it out of um, a vise. You can shoot it 100 yards with the right scope, the right setup, everything like that. You can put quarter-sized groups at 100 yards with this crossbow. It shoots, 10,000 feet a second. Obviously, that's an exaggeration, but 10,000 feet a second or whatever, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. Yeah, if you put a vertical bow through a hooter shooter or whatever you call them, that puts everything at the right stop angle, everything like that, basically is like a lead sled or whatever you want to call it for your bow, where it pulls it back, full draw, shoots it with perfect everything, setup, release, all that stuff. Archery equipment can shoot 100 yards. Is it ethical? I don't believe so. Are there some people that do it in different game, different habitats and scenario? Obviously it comes into play with that. But the people that have the more of the ability or skill set to shoot that far are unbelievable shots. I still think that they're a different breed of people that can shoot 50 yards efficiently, effectively, and do that. And a lot of these people that are shooting some of these far shots with archery equipment are in more western states, not as much here in the east. So I think that has a big thing to do with it, of that riff, and that's kind of been this whole little rabbit hole of conversation of Jerry's, diving into the crossbow thing. Again, usually it gets brought up once or twice a show just because Bo's got to throw the comment in on it, and we appreciate it. It gives good context and different folks tuning in different episodes, everything like that. So. But yeah, I definitely get the argument with it. My dad primarily now hunts with a crossbow versus a vertical bow. Because of different physical abilities, everything like that. But again, case in point, we'll dive back to the story of it. He had a couple years ago, 2 years ago, sorry. He had the opportunity to shoot double wide. The buck he ended up killing with his rifle. He had the opportunity to shoot that deer at probably 40 or 42 yards. I forget exactly what he said he ranged him at. But he had double wide come through, and he just said, hey, he's like, this deer is out of my effective range for archery equipment. I can't shoot this deer, and whereas, some folks might have said, well, I can shoot my crossbow 100 yards. I can shoot 40 yards. Boom. And, trying to figure out what a bolt does, let alone an arrow or whatever does. And the things it can do, it can hit I say a blade of grass. That's kind of an extreme example, but it could hit a goldenrod, sapling, stick, twig in between you and your target, and totally deflect. So I think there's just a lot of different factors that can come in with archery equipment versus firearms that just need to be taken into consideration with the bow and crossbow thing. Jerry says totally agree. Yeah, I'm not pro and I'm not anti, but I think when used in the right applications, I think that I think they're a good fit for individuals in some instances. So thank you, Jerry. Appreciate the comment, and I'm sorry I didn't get to it sooner. But it was on my docket here. I saw you sent the message in, so I apologize for not getting to it sooner. But thank you. Tom says, I have seen some videos of people hunting and shooting at these higher yardage. It is crazy, but they are lethal. I think bow season should have either cross or vertical. Again, I can see both sides of the debate with it. I think too that if you are using a crossbow, I think you should have to take a bow hunter safety course in New York. I am a firm believer in that you should have an archery sighted education to your thing, and not just say that you watch the video online and that you can use it because you watch this video and you sign a little slip in the book. Last I knew, that was how you were able to use a crossbow and use it under a muzzleloader stamp. And I think that New York State's kind of struggling where they're trying to fit where a crossbow fits into the whole situation. And I understand the why side of it with the muzzleloader permit. But I still think to hunt during archery season, where we are in the southern zone, I think you still should have the archery permission to be able to use a crossbow with a muzzleloader tag, if that makes sense. Or have a separate stamp that you have to buy that's a crossbow stamp, or something like that if you're going to use that weapon, and then be obviously trained into how to properly utilize it. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that work on bows, specifically at like Heritage Outdoor Sports, where they say these people have no idea how to assemble, shoot, use these weapons. They just don't put the time in with that weapon to get familiar with it. I can't tell you how many blown up bows I saw in the back of the bow shop this year at Heritage, because people are just either not reading, how to use this weapon versus other, models or whatever it might be of that weapon. But I think that the crossbow side of thing as a whole, I can't say as a whole, pretty close to a 50-50 split on the crossbow side of things gets abused. I'll just say that in a lot of cases, I think um, in some way, shape, or form, it, it can be abused. I think that's not a majority necessarily, but it's, I would say, a fair 50-50 split. I think um, can be abused, and just because of misconceptions about the product, I think is the reasoning for that kind of abuse or whatever. Abuse, I guess, isn't the right word, but kind of the misuse, I guess, is just due to a lack of knowledge or a lack of understanding about the weapon that you're using. It was the same thing when I was talking about trying to take a deer with my pistol for the first time and having numerous deer opportunities before I ended up taking my first. This doe, actually, the one that sits on top of my lamp and kind of provides a different kind of light here in the office. That just kind of sits on top of my lamp as a top lampshade. That first doe that I harvested with my pistol, I passed frick 5, 6, I think, different deer. Does actually, not just, I passed, I think, three bucks with the pistol, just because they weren't up to the age class that we were trying to target on that property. But I had does come through that I didn't feel comfortable with the angle. I wanted nice broadside, maybe slightly quartering away shot with that handgun, being able to have a good solid steady rest off of either a shooting rail or an adjacent tree in that stand, or someplace I could really lock up and get, down on that weapon and feel comfortable with the shot. And I was drawing down on a couple does before I ended up taking that one. And textbook shot. It was actually a really cool story. The other thing that's right behind that is the picture from when is actually a cool one. The picture of that night when I shot my first pistol doe, and Liza's doe looks a lot smaller, but her doe was actually bigger. I believe it was like 3 or 4 pounds bigger. This was December 5th, 2021 on the back of the picture. We were at Cider Ridge. I believe Liza shot hers first and then was calling me. And then a couple minutes later, here came a couple does down the trail, and boom, I got an opportunity one that night too. So again, knowing your weapon and being comfortable and proficient with it, I think is the biggest thing with your choice of weapon. I didn't realize that you didn't need a bow safety course for a crossbow. Yeah, that's a misconception. I mean, you just have to take, I believe, last I knew, it was a little snippet safety video, and anybody tuning in that, again, that was the last time I did the little certificate thing for the crossbow. When I shot 2 deer with the crossbow, 2 does with the crossbow in previous seasons. And the reason I decided to do that was just happened to be super cold. I didn't want to take my bow out and risk not being able to pull it back. I needed to get some doe harvest done in the late archery muzzleloader season. I didn't have a muzzleloader at the time, so the crossbow was my weapon of choice to take out. And shot 2 does with the crossbow. Different sets, but shot 2 does with the crossbow. But yeah, all you needed to do was take this little, it was a video link that was on the DEC website at the time, and then you signed a little square that was in the regulations book, and that said that, yeah, I watched the video, and I know what to do because I watched this safety video, and we're good to go. And yeah, and it's under the muzzleloader stamp. So if you're hunting with a crossbow, you have to do it with a muzzleloader stamp, not a bow license. So again, read your regulations book. Some folks that don't hunt with crossbows might not know that, but that's definitely something that should be taken into account when you're obviously taking a weapon afield. Is know what the legal regulations are for that, making sure that you're the right, in New York State, the right width, the right draw weight, the right, everything like that. I haven't been too familiar with the crossbow side of stuff because I just don't hunt with them. And that Excalibur that my dad used, or my dad has rather, has always been up to New York legal standards right up since it was, started to be accepted as a acceptable weapon to hunt with. So again, as long as it's legal, ethical, safe, I don't have a problem with it. It's just when it's not treated like the appropriate weapon is where I think it gets into a gray area with my position on it. So, all right, well, nice. Right at that 1 hour mark. I'm assuming my wife will be home soon if she's not home already. Sometimes her classes that she teaches there at Hobart go a little bit late in the evening on Wednesdays, depending on what she's got going on, or if she's got another meeting or something like that. And leading up to the sip and stroll, she's had other late meetings. So I'm going to get upstairs and see my wife if she's home. And if not, wait for her to get home so I can wish her happy Valentine's Day yet again. And spend some time with her before I got to hit the hay tonight. But yeah, great day, long, busy day. A lot of stuff accomplished, and was able to still get down here and shoot up a podcast episode for you guys. So, thank you, Mom. Sorry. Not Excalibur, 10-point crossbow. Good point. Good catch. Sorry. My bad. I remember he was between the 10-point and the Excalibur. I think that's why it crossed in my head crossed a couple wires on it. So thanks, Mom, for the correction, and thanks for tuning in all the way through this. Appreciate it. So again, we'll be posting we'll be putting a post up about the embroidered knit hats. They're going to be the beanie style hat with no fold over knit hat style. We're talking just a straight, kind of a skull cap beanie or whatever you want to call them, embroidered up with that 100 proof logo. And I think they did a real good job with it. So we're just finalizing pricing and stuff like that. And that's how it comes out on the embroidery machine. So really, really cool. Something we've been waiting on. I know the embroidery machine's been down from the lady that we reached out to, the local small business that we reached out to for that. So yeah, we got a lot of other stuff coming up. And then the sip and stroll this Saturday. Hope to catch you guys there in Phelps. And then a lot of other cool stuff coming forward. We got to do some follow-up videos and some in the field videos going forward to give you guys more of what you want. So if you want to see anything specifically featured, I know frost seeding and hinge cutting have been some things that have been top priority questions for a lot of folks. Hopefully get out there and get a couple of them shot up and or posted some tips and tricks and stuff like that, and some posts from other folks to be able to help you guys out. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't, please head over to the YouTube page, hit the subscribe button and the little bell notification so you get notified whenever we do any of these live streams, episode podcasts, anything like that. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any of the major podcast platforms. And if we're not where you listen to your podcasts, let us know and we'll get the stream linked up over there as well. So thank you guys very much for listening to 100 Proof. We're going to try to do one of these live episodes from the tasting on Saturday. We'll see how it works. I don't know how the internet service is going to be in that location. We're going to try it, but no promises with it. And if not, we'll be doing our Fresh Crack Friday video that gets posted every Friday at noon for the whiskey kind of side of stuff. And then, all the other content in between. And thank you guys so much for the support. It means the world. And hopefully Nate's back next week. He'll definitely be there at the Sip and Stroll this weekend. And we'll catch you all next time here on the show, whether we're in the office, at the bar, in the deer shed, or taking the show on the road for an episode. I think we had whiskey road trips or something like that got thrown out at my wife's baby shower this weekend. So stay tuned for more episode, guys. We appreciate the support, and have a good night, and happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Cheers.